It's Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers with tips and advice on landscaping and gardening. Here's Fernando Martinez.
Yes, indeed. I am here, and thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to another show. We've got lined up for you today all of your gardening and landscaping tips and advice, and hopefully helpful ideas on design and how to kind of tackle some of these projects, what we're looking out for, and really how to get the best bang for your buck and think about how everything's going to fit together and really complete your landscaping and your outdoor experience. So let's dive right on in. Today's topics are landscape lighting and fire pits. I wanted to go over some of the pros and cons to what types of landscape lighting you might want to use. And I hopefully the obvious, I wouldn't have to get into whether you would actually want landscape lights or not want them. I just assume automatically you would want them. I feel a necessary part of the landscape. I think it's actually really important that it gets addressed, and whether it's line voltage, which means just the regular 120 volts, normal fixtures on switches on the outside of the house, and the landscape lights you can do so much more with, and you have a lot of options. So I wanted to go over some of the options there with LED. Now, obviously, we have, maybe you still have halogen systems out there. I want to talk about what the difference is between the two and what you can do, whether you want to upgrade to LED or whatever. You've got all different types of fixtures, different types of lighting techniques. Style doesn't all have to be path lights and uplights. That's the most obvious. And I also, even those, I want to talk about those and talk a little bit about the design of how to install those so that you get kind of still a mature look. If you're going to take on this project yourself, or if you already have it and you want to kind of upgrade or modify an existing lighting system. I do want to talk about solar versus the wired systems, and I want to also talk about transformers. And they're a big part of the system. They don't get talked about very often or really looked into too much. And I've seen several different kinds of transformers, so I'm going to kind of steer you in the direction of having a good experience, having a landscape lighting system that would work and last for a really long time. And that's the ideas. I've also got some design ideas too I want to talk about. So why don't we dive right in on the lighting, and then we'll talk about fire pits after. So 12 volt versus 120 volt. Okay, what's the difference? Why would you want to do 12 volt? Why wouldn't you just do 120 line voltage out in the yard? When landscape lighting, when I was first introduced to it, there was a lot of line voltage lights just out in among the trees and the shrubs and things. Like if you had big oak trees, we would see conduit, running up, and junction boxes and these big giant bulbs and lighting up the trees. The biggest downside to putting line voltage outside is that all the wire has to be run in conduit and buried 18 inches deep. You need junction boxes for anywhere you want to tie two pieces of wire together. And it's cumbersome. It's, labor intensive. You've got to put, all this trenching and conduit and wire. And, the fixtures are limited too. So you end up with these big bulbs, and they're usually taking a lot of electricity and using, a lot of juice. 12 volt, the biggest advantage of that is you can run direct burial wire right on top of the ground. You can just run that wire along the sidewalk under the bark. You can run it along a fence line or whatever. Obviously, you want to keep it out of the way of anywhere are going to potentially dig. And the only reason is because you don't want to break the line. It's not that it's not safe. Where line voltage electrical can be unsafe, if you break into that wire, you have 120 volts right there, out in the landscape, and it's kind of dangerous. 12 volt is very safe. It's the low voltage. You could take a 9 volt battery and, put it on your tongue. It's not going to really shock you. I've touched both sides of the wires with my hands, and, it's very little electricity, very little voltage going out. So the 12 volt system is much safer. The transformer is actually what transforms that from the 120 line voltage, which is a regular plug in your house, and it steps it down to that 12 volt safer level. Now, you also plug that transformer into a GFI. You're absolutely 100% have to plug in any outdoor transformer for lighting system into a GFI protected plug. And you can find out if it's on a GFI, if you see the plug itself and it has the buttons on there, and you can push the button and one makes the plug, go dead where there's no power to it, and you push the reset button and it resets, you're safe. That plug is GFI protected. Sometimes they don't have the buttons on them. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not GFI protected, because a regular plug can be GFI protected if it's downstream from another GFI that's somewhere else in the house. And it could be in the garage or it could be in a bathroom somewhere. And you can get a GFI tester. It's a simple little device. You plug into that plug and you push the button. And if the lights go out, that means that a GFI has popped somewhere. You make sure you know where it is, or you're going to be going around looking and trying to find it. That's happened to me where I'll go and I'm test the plug and then it does pop, but then I have no idea where the GFI is. So the first place I check is the garage. And secondly, bathrooms have a tendency to have those, but there could be multiple GFIs throughout the house, and then you're trying to figure out which one it is. But it's good to know that anyway. So if you don't know and then you test it, you can go around and you can find it. So yes, 100% has to be GFI protected. Now, what does that mean? That means if you were to ever cut through any of the landscape lighting wire out in the field of where the lighting is, and let's say water's nearby, or there's any chance of you getting shocked at all, that GFI will pop. And I believe it's like 1/400th of a second that GFI will cut the electricity. So GFIs protect human beings. Fuses protect equipment and protect the transformer from blowing up or catching on fire or anything. Those protect equipment, but fuses take a lot longer to pop. In electricity world, electricity moves extremely fast, so it's 1 to 2 seconds and you're already electrocuted. Where a GFI will pop so quickly that it will protect anybody from getting electrocuted. Now, the only reason that that's necessary is if for some reason the transformer were to malfunction and not transform down to 12 volts. So even if you're cutting into it while they're on, nothing's going to happen unless for some reason the transformer fails, and in that case you have the GFI to protect from that. So anyway, that's your safety lesson there for the lighting system. Now let's talk about the LED versus halogen. So LED, I think pretty much everybody knows now, they're extremely low wattage. They're the lowest wattage type of bulb that's available. So they use very little amount of electricity, when you're thinking about electricity in terms of paying your bill and usage. So a lot of systems, halogen was around for a long time. I installed I can't even count how many halogen, lighting systems that I've installed over the years. And so they're still out there. They still exist. They're still legitimate. Definitely. They're not like they're giant users of electricity. They're maybe 20 watts. A halogen is pretty efficient in its own right. It's not as efficient as an LED, but it's definitely a step up from incandescent bulbs. So halogens, you're probably using about 20 watts per fixture, where the LEDs now you're using about 4 to 5 watts per fixture. So halogen is still a viable system. Now, as your halogen bulbs go out, if you have a halogen system, I would recommend replacing them with LED. A couple things you want to think about when you're doing that. The halogen runs, we had to be a little more precise with how many fixtures you could put on one run of wire. So it really was to balance that voltage. So you get what's called voltage drop if you put too many fixtures on one wire, especially if you do long runs and you daisy chain the lights. You'll have really bright lights near the transformer and dimmer lights farther away from the transformer. But if it was balanced correctly and your lights were installed right, by lowering the wattage of the bulbs, you are increasing the voltage of the wires. So make sure that if you have a multi-tap transformer and you're changing all your halogen lights to LED, that you also consider how much voltage is on that line, because on the multi-tap transformers, you have 11 volt taps, 12 volts, 13, 14, in some cases 15 volts that you can put on these runs depending on how much you needed because of the types of bulbs you were using. So it does change the equation a little bit. If you start out with an all LED system, you're totally fine. If your wiring runs are already at 12 volts, 13, or 11, you're fine. Just change all the bulbs to LED, and the LED bulbs can handle a lot more fluctuation in the voltage than the halogen lamps could. So, and you can mix. It's definitely okay to mix halogen and LED on the same run. You just have to be aware of what I was saying about the voltage at each fixture. And you can test that with a voltmeter. Very simple. There's 2 wires going to the light. Take a voltmeter. Doesn't matter which one you put the black or the red on. It's AC, so there's no right side or wrong side. You touch the 2 sides of the wire with a voltmeter and set it on, volts, and it'll read somewhere around 12 volts. Could be 10.8, 12.5, or whatever it is. If you have halogen bulbs, you don't want to exceed 12 volts. The LED supposedly can handle up to 15 volts, but I don't like running them there. So if you can avoid, I still like to keep all the bulbs running about 11.5 volts, somewhere between 11 and 12 volts, and you will have the best luck and the most longevity out of your system. Now, let's talk about cleaning the fixtures too. If you're out there replacing bulbs, clean them up. Check the seals. Every outside light, the lamps themselves, fixtures or uplights or path lights, whatever they are, they all have seals on them to keep the water out and to keep the fixtures working properly. So, clean them off, get all the webs and the bugs and spiders and stuff out of there, and, it makes them look nice. Clean off the glass so that you can get the most light going through there. Sometimes where there's sprinklers and things, it can get calcium buildup and they can start to look kind of shabby. And so, get some cleaner on there or something to take off the calcium if that's the case on the glass, and clean the seals and clean the fixtures off while you're changing the bulb. So it's just a good idea to keep that system operating, really good for a long time throughout your experience with it. Now, things change too over time. So trees grow, shrubs get bigger, things grow in front of the lights. If the lights are installed, correctly, you should have some slack there at each fixture. You should either, if you need to take that fixture, usually it's just a stake in the ground, you just pull the light up, you can pull it back, you can move it left or right. You should have some options and some play there. Also, you can change the bulbs as if they were put in when the trees were small and the trees grew, bigger. You can add a higher wattage bulb. So if you had, a 5-watt halogen, you can put in, or LED, you can put in a 9-watt, or you can, if you have halogen, if it's a 20-watt, you can go to a 35 or a 50-watt. I personally like to add more fixtures, and if the tree gets really large, and scoot them back. And you could still increase slightly on the wattage of the bulb to get it a little brighter. But if you can add a light or two, especially on larger trees, it just looks even better. And you're able to get more light because you can obviously double the wattage of one of the fixtures by just adding 2 lights and leaving the bulbs the same. And I think that's probably a better solution because you can light it from 2 different directions now. So let's talk about solar versus wired lights. Why would you want to do wired lights when solar lights are available? These solar panels that are on the top of the fixtures, I don't know. They're not very reliable. The bulbs in there are kind of bluish usually, and they don't last the whole night. They're kind of fading out, or if it's cloudy that day. So the solar lights, as far as having the solar panels on the actual fixtures themselves, it's just not a good idea. I haven't had a good experience with them. I haven't found any fixtures that I like that look good and nice and are decorative. They usually look, I don't know, cheap to me, or they just look ugly. They got this big panel on the top, and it affects how the design of the fixture is. If your house is on solar, a lot of homes are already on solar, That's great. That's the best way to get solar powered. And plug a transformer into the plug, wire all the lights together, and the solar panels on the roof will power that system. And then you basically have solar lights in the ground that are reliable. They're going to come on every night. They're going to stay on until you tell them to turn off, regardless of the weather or whatever's going on. So I'm a big fan of wired systems and not the solar lights. And a year, 2 years later, it seems like those solar fixtures are breaking. I just haven't seen any that I really like. I'm not against the technology, or if there was a beautiful fixture that had a really powerful, tiny little, solar panel on there that would last and work and be a nice, warm yellow, I'd be all for it, but I haven't seen it. I don't know why. I guess I don't understand why the solar panel technology hasn't come farther along in the amount of time that solar panels have been out. It seems like with computers, they just keep getting faster and faster and better and better. And cameras were able, what were we at, 2-3 megapixels now, or 50 megapixels, whatever. It seems like everything, all this technology is so fast, but solar panels are still massively huge. I'm amazed when I see a house with this massive panel on it that only powers one house. And then you're thinking this little tiny solar panel on top of that solar fixture is going to power what? I don't know. I don't get it. I'm still waiting for the solar panels to become smaller or have more powerful, where that one roof could maybe power 5-6 houses or a neighborhood. To me, that would make more sense. Anyway, there's decorative ways of lighting. So again, everything doesn't have to be path lights, up lights, though that's a great starting point, but play with the shadows. What about backlighting, downlighting, cross lighting? There's so many techniques that you can do, but you really have to get out there in the evening. It's extremely difficult to design a lighting system during the day. You can try it and like I say, get a good starting point, but you really have to go out there at night and play with the fixture, pull it out of the ground, pull it back, face it up, left, right, and really see what's happening with the shadows. Is it casting on the fence? Are we highlighting the trunk? What I don't like to see is on the base of a tree, a really hot white spot on the trunk of the tree. I like to back the light up, face it up higher. My experience is it's usually higher than you think. If I set the up light during the day, I pretty much, you think, oh, that should be up into the tree. And then you look at night and there's always that white hot spot on the trunk. And I think so turning it up higher towards the sky, backing it up away from the tree a little bit. Like I say, try 2 lights, one on each side of the tree, maybe 3 lights on the tree, and really see how it affects the insides of the branches and how far does it go up into the tree. If I move it over 5 feet and change the angle of it, and then I step back to the back door or across the street or what, and it's really like, look at how everything is affected by how you move the lights. In some cases, it's very small movements make a big difference, and it can really improve the look, even on an existing system that was put in maybe years ago and you haven't gone out there and adjusted any of the fixtures, or you haven't added any lights, or you haven't thought about how much wattage are the bulbs, or if they are halogen, you're changing them over to LED. During that process, think about the design of it. And do you need 1 or 2 more, or is it too bright in an area where you would actually eliminate a light? Or, I've always wanted light over here in this area. You can run another wire back to the transformer. So I'm going to be thinking about these things. So really, this is for anybody that if you had no lights at all, absolutely get a small lighting system. Start out small, easy. If you have, just no intent of doing it yourself, get somebody out there, get a couple quotes and find out about LED, 12 volt, what type of transformer it is. The transformers I wanted to mention briefly. I've seen really tiny transformers you can get at the box stores. There's no way they're going to last you that long. And if you get a lifetime, most transformers that are really good have a limited lifetime warranty on them. They're a little bit bigger, usually come in a stainless steel box. And that's the type of transformer to get. So right on the other side of the break, we're going to talk a little bit about fire pits when we come back.
You're listening to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on California's Central Coast. Here on 1240 AM and 99.5 FM, KSMA.
This show is brought to you by Airval Block. Concrete paving stones or pavers are not all created equal. Airval Block pavers are created from a dry mix of gravel, sand, cement, and color. With very little water used, they're super strong. They won't crack or fade. And to be an Airval Block paver, the gravel and sand come from right here on the Central Coast, supporting our local community. Airval Block is the only local manufacturer of concrete masonry products like pavers, mortarless retaining wall blocks. Airval Block products are high quality for peace of mind, and there are many colors to choose from. And if you're not sure which products you need or how to use them, you will always get expert advice from the staff at Airval Block. Products made on the Central Coast for the Central Coast. Visit their fully landscaped outdoor showroom to see the many ways you can use Airval Block products at number 1 Suburban Road in San Luis Obispo, or go online at airvalblock.com.
If you're thinking about installing a new paver patio or paver driveway, check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetocomehome.com. Serving the Central Coast since 2001, Chaparral Pavers will work with you to get it right and complete the job to your specifications, as customer service is king at Chaparral Pavers. Paver driveways are stylish and durable and guaranteed to never crack. If your old concrete driveway or entryway is a hazardous cracking mess, it's time to call Chaparral Pavers. Go to their website, ilovetocomehome.com. You'll find all the information you need. Check out photographs of past installations and reviews from Central Coast residents who have used Chaparral Pavers. And don't forget, all installations are guaranteed for the life of your home. So check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetocomehome.com. Chaparral Pavers, they'll make you love to come home. Now, back to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on KSMA.
And we're back. Okay, so we are talking about lighting, 12-volt lighting versus line voltage, 120-volt lighting, LED versus halogen, and you know what? With the new technology, with the LED lights, there's just no reason not to have an outdoor lighting system. It takes very little electricity, very little money on your bill to run an outdoor landscape lighting. The not having to change the bulbs is huge, big deal. It really changes everything, because especially if you were doing an extensive lighting system where you've got them up in the trees, coming down. I love downlighting, by the way. It simulates moonlight, you know, so it's kind of, even on cloudy nights or really dark nights where there's no moon, if with lights coming out of the trees and catching the shadows of the leaves and the branches, it can be really nice. Pergolas, patio covers look amazing lit. If you're going to be installing them, remember to run something over there. If it's under concrete, you can run a piece of conduit just to get the low voltage wire over there. So plan for those things. But having them out there where they would be difficult to change bulbs is not a problem anymore. You don't have to get big ladders out or anything. The bulbs literally will last like 10, 15 years without having to change them. So it's just a great time to do a landscape lighting system new, or to changing the bulbs to the LEDs. Because you obviously, if you have them, you want to use those same fixtures. The new fixtures that don't really even have bulbs, they just come with a board, I think are the best. They have little cooling fins on them. They've really thought through the LED aspect of them, because you can buy them both ways. You can buy fixtures that have LED bulbs like separate, or where they're built in. The built-in ones, in my opinion, are the best. So now I want to talk about a little bit about fire pits, because it kind of goes hand in hand. I mean, I love dusk. I love going out into my backyard at dusk with the fire pit going. The lights are starting to come on. It's starting to get darker. The wind's died down. It seems like the whole, hustle of the whole world is kind of calmed down. And it's just nice. It's a nice time of the day. It's relaxing, and it should be. Come home from work or whatever you're doing. And it's just magical with a fire pit. The warmth, if you think you're going to go outside at night, because, not being warm or not going outside at night could be, a reason to think to yourself, I don't want to do landscape lights because I'm not even going to go out there at night. But even that, you can enjoy them from inside the house. It feels good. If you have a fire pit, a hot tub, any reason that you're going to be out in the landscape at night, absolutely lighting is huge and a necessity in my opinion. But it just goes hand in hand when you do the fire pit. So I wanted to talk about them briefly. The gas fire pits are my favorite. There's no kindling, no having to stock wood. The smoke is a big one for me when my clothes smell like smoke and, it goes in your eyes and your face and you're trying to move over to one side and then for some reason it always follows me. But if you like that classic campfire, maybe you already have a bunch of wood, you live on a property where you're cutting trees or whatever, and I get it. I love campfires. I love camping. If the smoke doesn't bother you, putting the kindling wood, getting it started takes a minute, to get it rolling. And when it comes time to put it out, you got to pour water or, I get worried. Like, what am I going to do with this fire? I want to make sure it's out before I go to bed. So, if you're cool with that, they're actually a lot less expensive to install. They're very simple. It's just, there's any number of ways of doing them, but it's basically just ends up being a ring that's ready to accept, logs and kindling wood, and you're kind of done. There's the expense of the wood, I guess, if you had to buy it. But so there's that. To me, natural gas, everybody has natural gas piped to their house mostly, or propane or one of the other there at your house. So if you have that, it makes sense to me to use that as the fuel. So natural gas seems to really, it burns really clean. There's no smoke. It heats up really fast. It's very simple to light. And if you want to use it for 20 minutes, you want to turn it off, you turn it off, fire's off. There's no putting out the fire. You want to go back outside, enjoy it again, turn it back on. Okay, that's all the time we have for this week. Check us out on Facebook, and if you miss any part of this show, you can catch us on our YouTube channel, Chaparral Pavers. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
This has been Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers. Go to ilovetocomehome.com to find out more or call 805-588-6917. And be sure and tune in next week at this same time for Patio Side Chats here on KSMA.